Hey, everybody, we got a great show for you guys tonight. We are bringing on the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest to talk to you about all their experiences, research, and everything Sasquatch here on the show tonight. So buckle up. It's about to get good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. It's Friday night, and we've got an epic night in store for you guys. Joining me on this epic journey of the Paranormal Portal tonight is the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest. And all four of them are with us tonight. We got Cindy Goodbrake is joining us. Angelique Benham is here as well. Deanna, Montana is here. And Tonia Marie is here. So great to see you guys. Let me get you on screen so everybody can appreciate the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest. Hi, guys. How y'all doing?
Great.
Good. Good to see you guys. Glad you made it, Cindy. I was a little worried about you there for a while.
Yeah. I had to go across the border real quick.
Well, welcome back. Glad you made it for the show. And I know that we've got a lot to get through tonight, and we're going to do our best to get to the meat and potatoes of all of this. But I guess
Deanna?
I'm sorry.
Is Deanna there?
Yeah, she's here. She's sitting right here on the same screen next to you on my screen. So you're all here. Looks like everybody's present and accounted for, so we're in good shape. I just want to take a second to go around and introduce all of you. Cindy, why don't you start and just tell us a little bit about you and about this journey and how this all started in just a couple minutes, if you would.
Well, y'all already know me. I've been on your show a couple of times, and I mean, it was time to form a team, and it was Angelique right away because she lives here, but she'll tell you more about that later. We've experienced a lot of the same things, and it just dawned on me one day because I was in Texas when I had this idea. I actually woke up and it was like a prompting, like a very strong prompting. I just woke up and told my husband, I'm going to form a female research team. And go for it.
And there you are, right? Okay. So
yeah, it was just supposed to happen. I don't know. It was
Absolutely. And you pulled together an incredible group of people. I've met you all. And Deanna, of course, you've been a longtime friend of the show, and it's good to see you here as part of the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest. So
Thanks.
how did you get plugged into all this?
Cindy invited me to be part of her group. Yeah. I was like, well, no. Yeah. It's just an interesting subject.
Yeah, it really
Well,
is.
I haven't had any sightings, though.
But you guys,
you had an experience.
what was that?
You had a strange encounter of some type.
I can't chalk it up to a Bigfoot encounter.
Sure. But
Not yet.
something happened. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I don't think there's anywhere where these things aren't. So I think it's really cool. Angelique, I know you and I have talked a little bit about, and I've heard about your experience, which is incredibly profound as well. Obviously that was the impetus for your journey, and we'll get into exactly what you experienced later, but, how did it come about for you to join a team?
Well, Cindy and I lived on opposite sides of the same mountain, and we were friends already. We'd been friends for years, and we'd run into each other in town or something, and we'd start talking about the experiences we were having. And it wasn't very long before we were comparing notes and realizing that we were dealing with the same clan. And when she got a hold of me, it was actually just this spring, and I would contact her and tell her the experiences I was having. She would contact me, tell me about it, and pretty soon we went. She got a hold of me and said, I'm going to start a team of researchers, and I think you should join me on it. And I said, you bet, let's do it, because it's time that we take this one step further. We're not just experiencers now. We're actually researchers, and it got to the point where it fell into place, and now we're growing by leaps and bounds. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Tonia, you're a part of the team as well, and you bring a unique skill set to the team. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. So my background is probably more in the paranormal. I worked in a hospital setting for nearly 15 years in the form of organ donation. So I started to experience a lot of communication from the other side and started to develop my mediumship abilities. And then when I moved from Florida, I came out here to North Idaho, and I started to plug into the extraterrestrial community. And then that kind of led me into the Sasquatch community. And I started to attend some events that Kelly Lasperitis had put on in North Kettle Falls, Washington area. And then somehow that connected me to Cindy, of course, through social media. And she reached out to me. I was doing some land clearings, basically earthbound spirit kind of stuff that I had been doing for many years, and she asked me to come out to her land, to her land and check it out. And there's definitely a lot of activity going on out there on Cindy's land, which I'm sure we'll be talking about tonight. But so yeah, I haven't had any Sasquatch experiences, but I've definitely had extraterrestrial and of course paranormal experien's. So I do bring a little bit of a different tone to the group.
It's really, I really think it's a great robust group you guys have, because I do think that every one of you guys are bringing something unique to the group, and as a whole, that certainly strengthens your purpose and mission. But it is funny that a lot of people do report very paranormal-ish kind of activity around Sasquatch sightings, like failing equipment, batteries draining, things just being weird, that weird, feels like that high EMF kind of, creepy feelings. So there does seem to be at least some bleed through between the phenomena.
Absolutely. And I know Angelique and Cindy just recently had an experience where they actually got sick when they were in the presence of a structure. And so, yeah, I firmly believe in that. I've been out to the ranch, East Seti Ranch. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, Brent, over in Washington. And there's a lot of activity with Sasquatch and orange orbs. And so that was some of the experiences that I had actually had. And I had spoken to several people who've been to that ranch too. So yeah, there seems to be a correlation between paranormal activity and Sasquatch. And I know that our team, most of the members of our team have experienced that to some extent.
Right. Now, Cindy, I've been to your property. Don and I came out, and yeah, I can certainly vouch for the fact that there's something sideways over there. You know, not I'm not ripping on your property, but it certainly feels like you're kind of in a different place when you're there. I remember we heard growling, we heard like some weird noises when we were there. So Don has some of it on camera. I'm not sure what's happened to that yet, but we'll try to get it up on the channel at some point. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about your property, Cindy?
Where is Don anyway?
Oh, yeah, this is Friday nights. He's usually here on Saturday or on Wednesday nights. So he's got a busy schedule.
Dawn, my buddy. Yeah, so actually I didn't want to hog too much the microphone because, you know, y'all already know a lot about me. But what I wanted to say about the team was that Angelique was like first, you know, like, and then I thought it was going to be just me and her, but then I kept like waking up and Deanna kept popping into my head. And then I had gone when I was down there last winter in Texas at our ranch in East Texas, family ranch, not mine. I went to the Big Thicket because I told you that's where I had a really bad experience. And so some friends, the Southeast Texas Bigfoot, took me back to that area so I could like face my fears again. I was absolutely terrified before going to Dead End Road. And I went and then it was like nothing and I felt so stupid. But hey, that's what had to happen to close that chapter. But then when I got back to my RV, I was just like really unsettled. And I kept thinking of Deanna. And when I was at Boykin Springs, which is in the Big Thicket, I kept thinking of Deanna. And I was like, holy Jesus, she needs to be part of the team. So we each have skills that I didn't even know until they came to me. And I had kind of known, like, Deanna, you know, like, I didn't know too much about her, but I just know, like, basically, like, they were telling me, we want Deanna. I thought of her when I was in the Big Thicket. I was like, God, why she popped me into my head? Well, now I know.
Sure. Just hold on a sec. I'm going to reconnect the network because there's some noisy stuff coming from that line. So just give me a sec while I redo this. I don't know why it's so noisy, but sometimes it's just noisy. Technology.
We've got some storms.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. But we've had a whole technology night tonight, just in preparation for the show. But I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, 3 of the 4 Sasquatch sisters didn't know how to connect to us tonight, but we had a little boot camp beforehand, and they're all doing marvelous. So, and thank you guys for being willing to do that.
Woohoo!
Yep, you guys all passed with flying colors.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to keep going really quick about my property?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to emphasize on that I didn't know anything past like Angelique, and so it was like, okay, so I asked Deanna, and it was kind of weird, but she just like, okay, so that prompting, that urging feeling went away. Move ahead later. So we all 3 got together when I returned back to North Idaho, May 1st. And we got together, but there was something missing. And, you know, because I lived here on my property, there was like some structures I wasn't sure because I was gone. And then there was just like a lot of contention, and like I can walk outside, especially to the right side of the back, which you already know about pustular hair. So I had been following Jessica Jones and Tonia, and I just found them. And I was thinking, oh, right, somebody with remote viewing experiences. Yeah. And so I had been reaching out to Jessica Jones, to anybody, like, can somebody, like, remote view my property? So that was when I realized she's close to us, Tonia. So I invited her over, and then you're going to hear about the crazy stuff that's been going down on this property. So, and I will let them tell you. Oh, my God.
Sure.
Let them tell you. So
Okay.
that's how the team came together.
Mm-hmm.
Tonia can do my property, and she can probably tell you the story of what happened when she got here, and now she's a part of the team, and it's complete. I literally could feel like a whole circle in my head, just like it's like it's locked in. We're done until they tell me something else. I don't know, but I will let them tell you what Tonia did when she was coming here to my house and all that good stuff.
Okay.
So basically, Cindy asked me to come over just because I feel energy. I can tune into energy. And I know, Brent, you probably could feel that too when you were at her house. You can just sense there's an energy there, right? So the moment I walked on her property, I had goosebumps just covering my entire body. And I think each and every one of us on the team can probably say that we felt the same. We didn't really know what the presence was, but we could feel it and sense it. So with my clear audience, which is basically my hearing, I hear things, in other, frequencies, I started to really pick up on a lot of heavy spirit energy in the area. And so I kind of just went around the land, and we had invited my friend Dawn out, who does land clearings with me, and we use sound to do this. And so we had walked her entire property and cleansed the land, very similar to what the natives would do, back when they would cleanse the land or create a sacred site. We went through Cindy's entire property, and she showed me all the different structures, which are pretty elaborate. I mean, she's got several structures on her property. I had taken pictures of some of them, and this was like a 2-day process. I had gone out there on my own the first day, and then the second day is when we actually started to clear the land. Well, when we were walking around the property that first day, we took some photos of some of the structures. I actually tuned in that there's an Indian burial ground there as well in the back right of the property, kind of back towards the neighbor on the right of her property. And we went back and kind of cleared that area. And then we went home that night feeling good. I mean, I went home feeling good that night. And I felt like we cleared some things there. Mm-hmm. Well, the next morning, Cindy calls me and says, "You aren't going to believe this." And I'm like, what? She's like, well, first of all, I walk out my front door and there's white feathers all over the place, outside my door. Right, Cindy? She's like, what is this?
I don't kill the neighbor's chicken.
Something happened. Well, then as Angelique shows up later on, and she's like, wait a second, this tree structure looks like it's been moved. It looks different. So we immediately recognized that one of the tree structures had been moved or deconstructed and moved to over where the Indian burial ground was. Well, as we're walking around the property, we also noticed that there is what appears to be a labyrinth. A labyrinth was created, like a spiral of sticks and rocks had been created in a certain area of her property, and that was not there the day before we had actually done the land clearing. So over the course of the evening, her property was quite busy after we had done some clearing to it. And so we had some visual kind of proof that some things had transpired over the night. And I'm sure, Angelique, you could probably chime in on some of the things that happened too, during those 2 days that we were there.
Well, we also had the tree peekers too. So because while you and Dawn were running the sound bowls, and I think one of you was smudging me. Was it you, Tonia?
Yep.
That I'd asked to smudge me. And while you were smudging me, caught a movement out of the corner of my eye out in the woods and looked over, and there were 3 of them that were doing the whole tree peeking thing. And I don't know who all saw them, but I know I did. And I was like, oh, there they are.
Oh. Yeah.
They really, really loved the sound. The Tibetan bowls that you use. Whenever you bring those out, it's like they come out with this wonder of, oh, what are you doing? And that's when they start showing themselves. And it's really interesting to see the reactions that you get.
Wow. That's really interesting too, because I know that from all evidence that I've heard, they're an incredibly curious being. I mean, they seem absolutely intrigued by what we're doing, and whenever you bring out something new that they're not interested, it really does seem to get their attention, and so singing bowls, I think, is an excellent idea, just in the fact that I'm sure they've never heard the tone before, but maybe they can appreciate the resonance of it as well, because they do seem to have sound as a tool for them. So maybe they key in onto that and are like, wow, what is that?
But what happened, Tonia, the first day when you were there, because Angelique, we came out later that afternoon, and she also came back the next day with John. We were all like limp dolls. I was just like, I looked drunk. I mean, I was just like laying there. And then, I mean, we were all, I was just totally out of it. Sitting in the chair, and I was just like, I was so drained.
She was, and I think what happened, Brent, is that when I cleared the land, I cleared Cindy too. I think she had a lot of earthbound spirit attachments, very similar to when you go into a paranormal site. Oftentimes they can attach to people, and I feel that Cindy, living on that land, she had a lot of attachments. And when I cleared that, we both had an emotional moment. It was almost like this surge of spirit energy left her property, and then there was a sadness over it of whatever was left there was kind of sad to see them go, but also kind of happy to see them cross over, to the light. And so I think when we cleared her land, we cleared Cindy too, and it was very obvious because Angelique and I were like, what is wrong with you? She appeared to be very kind of disoriented. She was stuttering, couldn't talk very well. And so I kind of asked her to call her spirit back into her body, because it was like a part of her had left when those earthbound spirits left. And oftentimes that can happen when someone is actually living on the land in an area where there is a lot of paranormal activity.
Sure. You get attuned to it, I suppose. Yeah. And it becomes part of your balance. Yeah. And that's really cool. I think that's very profound. And to have the tree peaking at the same time, I think is incredible. Like, that's a lot of different things coalescing in one area. So that's pretty profound. Wow. And Deanna, were you there for all this too?
Not in detail.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Deanna wasn't there that day, but she showed up a few weeks later, and, you got in, had some experiences too on, just us being out and about that day. We hiked, and
sure.
And Deanna did have some experiences as a team.
Yeah, the whole fact that they named the mountain Hoodoo. It's like, wait a minute, somebody knows something there.
It's the Hoodoo hoodie, and that's a story that we could share with you.
Sure. Yeah, please do. Love to hear it.
I'll let Cindy share that story.
When we, so we went up on the mountain on day 2, and it was Angelique, Tonia, John, and me. And John had her sound bowl out, and Angelique, we were like 8 miles up, almost to the top of Hoodoo. And we stopped at this location for a reason, and then y'all hiked up the hill, right, Angelique? And then Angelique can tell you what happened then, because John had her sound bowl going, and again, I'll let Angelique tell you, because that was amazing. And then I want y'all to talk about when we went further up north as a team. that stuff we found, because that's pretty amazing.
Well, on what we had up on Hoodoo, when Tonia and Dawn were running the sound bowls, was Dawn with us at that time when you and I hiked up, Tonia? Okay. We hiked up the hill because we had seen a small structure. Actually, and I can't say small, it was just not super elaborate. It was a big structure. But we had parked on the side of the road and hiked up an embankment. And when we got up there, Dawn was standing down at the road running the sound bowl. And us girls, Tonia and I, up there in the woods, started hearing, what was it? Was it a knock at first?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we started hearing tree knocks. And then I think you did a whoop or something, and it responded by doing a whoop back. And of course, our hair on our arms is standing straight up. And then I happened to look down and realized that in the pine needles, there was prints that looked like they were about this big, which I would say probably 17 inches long, maybe a little bit bigger. But they had probably a good 5 foot space between each of them, and they went up the hill. And I remember I looked down at Tonia and I'm like, there's prints right here. Wow. Oh my gosh. And so, yeah, that was pretty exciting. But we didn't follow them up too far because we knew that we had one of them was there responding to us. And so as Dawn was running the music, the sound bowls, it was like they came alive. It was like the woods came alive. Like there was, it just brings out, like you said, a curiosity, and great success. And it was pretty amazing. And I'll let you, Tonia, talk about the next time.
Yeah, and I want to also talk about, so Angelique, when she goes out and about and she works with this particular clan of Sasquatch, she leaves what are called glyphs. And she makes them in the shape of an A. So she'll take 3 sticks and make them in the shape of an A. Well, the second day that we had cleared Cindy's land, on the edge of that labyrinth that they created, they had actually left an A glyph on the land as well. And so the funny thing is, she had told me that a day or two before, and when I saw that labyrinth, I did not even recognize the glyph. And then Angelique showed up and said, oh my gosh, there's my glyph. And so it was almost like it was meant for her to see, because I had completely overlooked it and she immediately saw it. So they were communicating with us in a way that we, each and every one of us could kind of tune into. And so in that particular tree structure that we found on Hoodoo Mountain, it almost looked like a door, didn't it, Angelique? It was like 2 huge trees with one tree broken on the top of it. And there's a picture, we have a picture of Angelique standing under it, and it's just huge. It's, it goes, at least 20 feet tall, I'd say, in the air, how tall that thing was. And so then we decided to go up to Granite Falls, which is up near Priest, And so we as a group, this is when Deanna's in town, we as a group decided to go on a hike. And this area is just full of granite. It's got waterfalls. It's got these beautiful cedar trees. And it's just a gorgeous area. And so we go on this amazing hike. It's in like the mid 70s. We're having a great time, and we're doing whoops along the way, and we're leaving glyphs, and we're having a fun time. And then we get back, almost back to the car, and Deanna and Cindy head back to the car. Well, Angelique says to me, "Hey, let's walk up the trail just a little bit further to see if we can find that glyph that we left, to see if anything has been changed." Well, as we walk, Cindy and Deanna head back to the car, and Angelique and I start walking up this trail. Well, we're walking and we're walking and we're walking, and then we're like, where is this glyph? Like, we could not find it. We just felt like we were walking for a while, and then we realized there's a huge tree crossed over the path that was not there before, and we had to physically walk under the tree. Well, then as we kept walking, we started to feel this overwhelming sense of being watched, and it was just this weird feeling. We kind of stood there, and we felt like there were eyes on us, and we both were like, all right, it's time for us to head back to the car. So we just kind of walked back under the tree, and headed back to the car, and we shared our story, with Cindy and Deanna, and then we all jump in the car and we're heading back into Blanchard, and Cindy screamed, we're all in the Jeep, and Cindy screams, "Slow down, there's a tree structure." Wow. And so Angelique backs up, and we're just thinking, what? Well, we get out of the car, and this is a massive tree structure right on the side of the road. I mean, this was one of the most obvious tree structures, and Cindy saw it, first. And so we get out of the car. I had my sound bowl. Angelique and I, of course, hike up into the structure. I've got my bowl. I'm standing in there, and we look down, and we're starting to see these blue that appear to be berries, these blue psychedelic looking, kind of sapphire looking berries. And all of us commented on them. We're like, what the heck are those? So we, we're standing there. Angelique and I are standing in there, and Deanna and Cindy are over on the other side investigating, seeing what they find. And during this time, Angelique and I are starting to get goosebumps like nobody's business, right? Angelique, we are feeling it. It's like something's here. They're picking up on the sound bowl. Something's tuning in. Well, I was on one side of the structure. She was on the other, and I had like a pine cone kind of poop, right next to and I turned around. I'm like, was that Cindy and Deanna? Are they throwing stuff? And they're like, no, we're way over here, So then I think, Angelique, did we find a track in that structure? Do you remember?
I don't remember there being a track in that area, but I do remember you getting hit with a really powerful emotion, like almost
That's
like
right.
infrasound or
That's
something.
right, I did.
Hit you really hard.
It did. And I kind of hunched over because I started to get emotional. And that's when I was like, okay, there's a presence here. There's something here. Well, then, some time goes on, and I'm watching one of Jessica Jones's shows. She's got someone who does Sasquatch research over on the East Coast, and he starts talking about these blue berries that look like marbles. And I'm like, no way. And they're recognizing these around tree structures. And so I talked to Cindy and Angelique and Deanna. I'm like, you guys, I think we saw these berries or these marbles or, whatever they are. But this tree structure was pretty profound. I mean, I feel like, Cindy's got some amazing ones on her land, but these were huge trees. They were not fallen. They were obviously picked up and placed. Some of them were bent, into place. And when we were in that structure, we kept communicating with whatever was there, saying, we're not here to cause harm. We're cleansing the space. We were just really sending more of a loving energy out than a more of a threatening energy. And I think that's why I received that emotional kind of wave. I don't even know how to explain it, but it came over me at Cindy's property too when I cleared those spirits. So I think when we incorporate the sound, with the tree structures, there's something to be said there for sure.
It really does. Yeah.
Of those berries, did we?
No, we did not.
It'd be
Got to go back to that structure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what those are, because if they're commonly found, or at least there's a correlation between these weird bluish berries being found in these structures, even across the nation, which is really profound, because of course the plant life out here is not usually consistent across the nation. There's variations. So it's very interesting that they both of you guys experienced that.
Yeah, and it just caught our eye because it was this beautiful sapphire blue color. It was something, and Angelique is very knowledgeable in berries and plants, and as we hike, she kind of shares with us what things are. But she looked at those, and I'm not real sure what those are, and I didn't really put two and two together until I watched Jessica's show. And I'd have to go back and look to see who that researcher was, but it was really funny that he had mentioned the same thing that we had seen.
Right. Yeah.
Now, when I talk about
Oh, we can't hear you, Cindy.
Can't hear you, Cindy. Talk louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there's just a blowing noise coming through, a rumbling noise. I think it might be from yours, Tonia.
You think?
Yeah, there's
Yeah, the wind is really amping up here. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
Here,
Can you hear me?
myself?
There you go. Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when I'm picking huckleberries, I've seen these berries before, and I've taken pictures of them, but I've asked people, what are these berries? So I don't know, because they're not Oregon grape. So I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see a picture of them, just because it sounds so unique. And I'm no botanist by any measure either, but I find that very interesting that there's a similarity, you know, even across the country. Like perhaps maybe it's just the color, that there's something about that color that's or whatever, an energetic thing. Because I often wonder about these tree structures. It's like, what are they really? Because they're obviously not something these things are living in, but they put them up like monuments of some kind. And it is really curious. What are they doing? What are they communicating by this? Or is this a special place to them? Is that one location very special to them? And so they erect these huge structures around it as a mark of being sacred. It's just me throwing ideas at it, but there is that's something that's across the board, across the world. People report these structures in correlation with these beings, and you got to wonder, what are they doing? What is it for?
Well, a lot of the times they are by like a game trail or something significant like that. Another pattern that we have seen is we'll find breaks like at least 16 to 20 feet high. And we'll see these breaks and okay, sorry, y'all, my dog. And so we'll follow these breaks, and it'll lead us to like something bigger. And well, you have to hear about what happened to this structure that we found, and Tonia and Angelique had something really crazy happen.
Sure.
You want to tell the story, Angelique, or you want me to start it?
You go ahead.
Okay, so we this is in the Hoodoo Valley, right? Wasn't it, Angelique? Because I was kind of riding along with you, and she took me to an area that she had taken Cindy to before, because they had found this very unique structure. It almost looked like a tree had been split down the middle and turned into a T. And I was watching Jessica Jones again. She had Jeremiah on there, and Jeremiah lives in the Adirondacks, and he was actually talking about seeing these structures as well. It's not a lightning strike. It actually just looks like something split the tree down the middle, and then the two sides make a T. Wow. And so Angelique, we had parked, and Angelique is like, okay, let's walk right into here. We'll be able to see this tree structure. It's not far at all. Well, as we're walking to the structure, we start seeing these huge bones. Huge. They had to have been moose, something elk, something big. Well, the thing is they didn't appear to be gnawed on or chewed. They actually appeared to be sucked on, almost like a human would suck on a chicken wing, like just to really get the meat off of it. It was much more nothing bitten, because we had actually seen them, and we started to follow these bones, and they kind of led us to the tree structure. And so Angelique and I are walking around the structure, and at this point I can see her Jeep. She has a bright red Jeep, and I can still see the Jeep. Well, as we're walking around, we're kind of just investigating, looking for things, and then we continue to walk, and this is not far at all from where we parked. And I made the comment, this is when I didn't see the Jeep for a minute, I made the comment, wow, these woods are so dense, you could really get turned around in here. And she goes, oh no, we're just right over here. Well, I'm following Angelique, and we're seeing these bones, huge bones, and before you know it, we cannot find the Jeep. Like, we are kind of in this area, and Angelique's like, all right, let's keep walking this way because the road is just up here. Your car should be right here. Well, we end up finding a dirt road and we walk up a little bit further and she's like, your car should be right here. Well, we get up there and my car is not there because I had followed her, parked my car at the front entrance, and then rode in with her because it was rougher terrain and her Jeep could get in there.
Sure.
Well, we get to this road and my car is not there, and we continue to walk just a little bit further and we find this meadow that we had not passed. And we're like, where the heck did this meadow come from? Right? So we're it's about 4-ish in the afternoon, and it doesn't get dark here until, at this time of year, it was probably 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it got dark. So I'm like, all right, we've got some time to find the car here. Well, at this point, we didn't have our backpack. We didn't have our gun. We didn't have our bear spray, nothing, because we thought we were just going to walk, maybe 30 yards to see this tree structure. Well, we end up lost. We literally end up lost. And so we take this road, and we get to like a fork in it, and Angelique's, well, we can either go right or left. She goes, let's go left and see if that takes us back to the Jeep. And so we keep walking and walking, and at this point, I'm not really panicked, but I'm thinking, wow, these woods are starting to look very familiar. I almost feel like we're walking in a circle, a little bit. So we keep walking, and then boom, we see the red Jeep, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Well, we had left the windows down, and we had food in the Jeep. Well, we get back and we check everything out. Everything looks fine. We get back in the car and we decide to kind of go investigate. Well, we look at the clock, and what did the clock say, Angelique? Like, we had been gone for at least, I'd say 30 minutes at least. What did the clock say? How long did it say we'd been gone?
Oh no, we had been gone, I think, for a couple hours because it took us a long time at first to investigate everything to even get to the tree. Mm-hmm. And then from the tree, we were looking at the mounds and following the trail back. And then when we got back to the Jeep, what was it, 29 minutes?
Yeah, that was, yeah. So it was 30 minutes. It said we were gone, but we had walked a distance, like, oh my gosh. And when we got back in the Jeep to go find the meadow, it was at least a mile away. And we were walking through very dense brush. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, this is an open field and we're walking in a mile. I mean, this is heavy, thick brush that we're walking through that we had covered a mile and then got lost and then found our way back in supposedly 30 minutes.
Wow.
And so Angelique reached out to Nick Valente, who does a lot of this, research. And what did he tell you, Angelique?
Well, he had told me that he thought that it was quite possibly we had gone into the back door of a portal instead of going in and losing time and only seeming like we were there for a few minutes, but taking hours. We actually come in backwards where we had literally spent hours and only a half hour had gone by. And I want to, after this happened, the very next weekend, my son, who was, he was in the military, and he was very intrigued by it, said, Mom, you're taking me to this place. And I told him, I said, if you and I are going to go there, we're going to play it smart this time. We're taking weapons. We're taking a bug out bag with survival gear, and we're going to tape off to the trees. So we brought very bright logging tape and tied it to the trees. And so every couple yards we'd stop, turn around, make sure we could see the tape on the tree behind us, and then we'd tie off again. And we did that so that basically we wouldn't get lost. We could always turn around, follow the tape back. And we followed the identical trail into the tree. We followed the identical trail that Tonia and I had taken back around, and we spent 3 hours. My son and I had spent 3 hours following the identical trail, and we were literally looking at our footprints. We were following Tonia and I's footprints.
Wow.
And it went right back to the Jeep. We did not get lost that time. And then I loaded him back up into the Jeep. And I said, now I want you to see where we came out by the meadow. And I had to literally go all the way around. And this is like only a 10-acre parcel, okay? So it's like just a small stand of trees. But it was a mile in the opposite direction where we found the tracks where Tonia and I had walked down the road from the meadow. And my son looked at me and he's like, Mom, I don't know how you did that. He said, you walked over a mile in the wrong direction, and then you had to walk over a mile or so to get back to the Jeep. And it only took a half an hour for Tonia and I, but for my son and I, it took over 3 hours.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
So that is lost time. And you did a story, Angelique, on a first-hand account of the rancher, remember?
Yeah.
He had also lost time. What's funny is that it was on the other side of the mountain where this rancher who contacted me, he worked at this ranch for like 3 years, and he had a lost time incident, and that was a crazy incident him and his family experienced at this ranch. They same thing. He entered a forest to track these squatches. When he came out on the other side, a whole day had passed, but his time was like maybe half an hour from the point of entry that he went when it went on to inland paperland, that it went on. So, yeah, so there's lost time here. And this happened to another woman, but I don't know her story. She won't talk to me. She just said she had the same thing happen on, she's a neighbor of this ranch where this happened. And so, yeah, it's crazy, We're experiencing lost time now and getting lost in the middle of nowhere where you should be able to just turn around and see your vehicle.
Right.
It's crazy.
I cover those kind of stories quite often on the portal, and I find those fascinating because it is almost like there are, as you guys suggested, portals that appear. And I don't know if it's possibly a natural rhythm of our reality, or, the fact of the whole multiverse idea, and maybe sometimes those realities bump into each other and create these openings that people stumble into. But I find those stories really fascinating. I've experienced something like that myself, but it was more of a space anomaly. Like suddenly I was way different point on the road during a blizzard than I should have been. I should have had to go through this curvy part that was very dangerous, and I was very nervous about it. And the next thing I know, I'm seeing the sign for the town coming, and it's like, wait, I shouldn't be here. And I didn't feel anything when it happened to me, and I was always amazed by that. But maybe it is just a seamless experience, but perhaps there's these little rifts that appear that change space, time, our perceptions, or something. But it's a phenomena that comes up surprisingly often. I think perhaps a lot more people have experienced it, but they just don't know what to say about it, or who to say anything about it to. So, but I think that's a very natural part of our world, I believe. I don't know, but perhaps these forest beings know about them and know how to navigate them. Maybe it's part of their, basically like their subway system. They know how to get all over the place because they know where these little openings will appear and when, and they just can navigate that. And we just stumble into them once in a while. So it's very curious.
I had something happen to me personally that made me a firm believer that these portals move, that they don't stay in the same place. And this happened years ago. I was living up in the Colville National Forest, and I lived, literally my yard was surrounded by Colville National Forest. And a lot of granite, big, huge boulders, huge boulder field. And my kids had all gone they were all at school, and I had gotten off early from work, and I decided to go hiking up on the mountain because I literally lived at the base of a mountain. And I hiked up to this meadow because during the late fall and the early winter and the very first snows, there was a herd of elk that would always pass across the side of the mountain where I lived. And so every year I would go up and I would look for those tracks for the elk, and I would sit and I would hide in the bushes or whatever, and I would just watch the herd the whole time. And there was always this enormous bull. There would be a couple other satellite bulls that'd be with him, but there was always this enormous bull along with the cows. And every year I'd go up and sneak up there, and he would have made it, and I would have been kind of rejoicing, going, yay, he lived another year to carry on his DNA.
Yeah.
Well, I went up there, and it was a beautiful sunshiny afternoon, absolutely beautiful, clear. It was probably in the early 70s. It was late fall, and I knew that herd was coming in. I knew that they were getting ready to come through. So I wanted to get up there and look for the tracks. Well, surrounded by, a boulder field up on the mountain, and then this beautiful little, probably, I would say maybe a 2-acre meadow at best. It was a pretty small one. And then trees all the way around it, real thick trees. And I would go up there and look for the herd to cross across that meadow because they'd leave their tracks. Well, in the center of that meadow was a fallen log, and it had been there for years and years. It was rotten, but it still had a good butt on it. And so I'd go up there and just sometimes if I wasn't hunting or anything, I'd go up there and just kind of hang out in the meadow because it was just a peaceful, happy place for me to be. And I went up there one afternoon and I sat down on the end of the log. I was right on the butt end of it, and just sitting there and watching the birds and just enjoying life, okay? And all of a sudden, I started getting a feeling like, uh-oh, something's not right. And, I try to listen to that. The hair comes up, whatever, you listen. And I was watching a flock of chickadees that were gathering, it was early fall, so the birds were starting to gather and collect. And then all of a sudden, the whole flock of birds just was gone. Mm-hmm. And I went, uh-oh, something's not right. Yeah. That's a sign you look for. And I heard just a real slight rustling behind me, and I didn't want to look really fast, so I just kind of slowly turned my head, and there was that bull, that big bull. Ooh. And I'm sitting there out in the open on the log going, there he is, he's right there, oh my gosh. And I was so excited, but then at the same time I started going, uh-oh. I'm out in the open, and if this guy wants to spar, I've got nothing to be able to hide behind. I'm a goner, Yeah. So I'm just sitting there on the log, and I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He walked up to the end of the tree, the end of the log at the far end, and he did something that completely blew my mind because I had no clue that these things exist. But he bent down, he kind of sniffed the ground, and he looked over at me, and I remember thinking, uh-oh, I got nothing to protect me, so whoops. But he looked over at me, and then he jumped. And he shouldn't have had to jump. I mean, the grass was only at best this high. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was had been trampled down, eaten, whatever. It was a clean meadow with hardly anything in it. It was wide open. And he jumped. And when he jumped, he dissipated. He just went nose to rump in nothingness. And wow. I sat there going, did I just see that? Am I hallucinating? And I sat there for a few minutes and just kind of like, what the heck just happened to me? Because I had never heard of this before. So I got up and I went over and I looked for his tracks. And his tracks came out of the woods and they went up to the base of that tree. And then they ended. There was no tracks on the other side of that tree. Ooh. And I remember just kind of going home going, whoa, I don't know if I smelled, if maybe somebody was growing something in the bushes that made me hallucinate. Yeah. I went home just going, glitch in the matrix. Oh my gosh. And I went and I looked, and finally, it was a couple weeks later, I came back to that area and I spotted that herd of elk, and that bull was not with them. The bull was never with them again. And as far as I know, I didn't know anybody had ever harvested that bull. So there wasn't anybody around that went, I took him last hunting season.
Right.
He's gone.
Just
and
gone.
Yet I had been in that meadow a million times. I promise you, I'd stepped in that same spot and there was nothing there. There was nothing there.
Right.
So I don't know.
That's incredibly profound. You know, we hear stories about it and people experiencing passing through something like, even to the point of like walking on a well-known forest path and suddenly they're in a jungle instead of a forest. Or they're in a grassy field and it's night instead of broad daylight in the woods. And then they backtrack and they're back where they go, and then it's not an issue anymore. Whatever it was just disappeared. Like they can continue on and it's normal again. But, you know, I mean, it sounds like you witnessed something passing through one of those. Now, the interesting part is it seems like the elk was aware of it, right? Like it knew where to go.
Yeah, it was like he walked over to the base, he sniffed the ground, looked at me, and he jumped. And he shouldn't have had to jump. I mean, he should have literally just stepped right over, because it was the far end, the top part of the tree. Mm-hmm. It was rotten. It was probably only that high.
Sure.
I mean, he should have just walked right over the top of it and kept going. But he jumped, and it was like, watching an elk, you know, go over a farmer's fence. I mean, he literally jumped into the air. Wow. And then it was the only way that I can really describe it. I couldn't see anything. There
Sure.
wasn't like it wasn't like you could see shimmering or anything. I hear people talk about that. Well, I didn't see that. Mm-hmm. It was just like he was there. He jumped and he just
was
gone. And
wow. It's like he looked over at you and said, "Hey, watch this."
Look what I can do.
Yeah, that's wild.
I've seen that same thing happen here on my property, and this dog is bugging me. I have seen that happen on my property, but what I have to do is I have to get my camera, and so first off, I'll feel something. Okay. So I will feel something, and then I will go, okay, get my phone, and I'll start panning. And then this one day in front of my property, like to the other complete side of my property where Gunner was barking at my lab and where he was roared at. Y'all have heard that recording. I was in that area, I guess. And there's this bush that the moose love, and I've got it all over the back of my property and in the front yard, like in the corner. And Star, my Malamute, y'all have seen Star, she was going through this plant, and I stopped my phone and I could see it. I could see the outline of, it looks like a Sasquatch sitting down, like the back part of it. And I was like, I can see you. I felt kind of like, duh. And Star was going in and out, just like she went in like 3 or 4 times. I was just like, and then it got up and it just took like 2 strides and I couldn't see it anymore. And in my video, I can see it. Now, of course, this video is not something I can just show everyone.
Sure.
And this is where it gets complicated, because this is where the division in the community of what people believe, as everybody knows, of only physical beings that you can see, like flesh and blood. I just hate to use those terms because they are flesh and blood, but they're also something else. And so that's, I've seen it on other occasions. I've taken pictures and other people have seen them, where there's just things in the woods, in the trees. I've got a family photo of, there's a wolf above my head and they've seen it. I mean, why is a wolf above my head? So it's not just the Sasquatch, it's other stuff. And, that was when I accepted the fact that it's more, because I tried to keep everything separated, like the paranormal, like, I've told you all when I've gotten audios, I've got like chanting, I've gotten like just other sounds, and I would be like, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But then when you start hearing like my name being called and then other stuff, other phenomena that you just can't explain, I mean, this was, we all just like woke up. I woke up really quick, and the more that I accepted that, things just kind of fell into place. And then I had other people contacting me, hey, I see that in your photo. And I would be like, really? And then I had another photo of like a transparent Sasquatch, like walking away. And Kelly, what's her last name? Last Bride. It's not Last Bridus anymore.
I don't know.
Is it?
Kelly Rainbow Butterfly, I guess, is what she goes by now. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she could see stuff in these photos I was showing her. Other people were seeing it before I had even matured to that step. But these are like steps, and I fought it for so long. I mean, I am just blown away at, like how Tonia came into the picture and she just like, it was like that missing puzzle. And we've come so far in the couple of short months that we have been together, the things we've experienced.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of, again, it's a really cool combination of people bringing their unique and individual tools to the collective. And I think that that's really what helps. Also, in just terms of the gender, I've heard that there many times all female teams will have more likelihood of making contact or at least getting closer to these beings than male teams will. And maybe it's the whole testosterone thing. I don't know. I mean, it could be an energetic thing. But that certainly has come up many times that I've heard. So I think it's a great thing, and I'd like to see more all women teams out there. I know there's several, but it is interesting that they seem to be cognizant of the fact that there's men and there's women, and they seem to be gravitating more towards females in many cases, at least in some cases. I can't speak authoritatively on that, but at least anecdotally that comes up.
But what's funny is, trying to keep everything separate, like I said, and then here comes the UFO phenomena, because our other friend, Dawn, who was over that day, she knows a lot about that, and so does Tonia. And what's hilarious is that my friend, one of my best friends, she's, not into Sasquatch. Well, she's into kind of like all of it. Well, she is calling me up one day, Kathy, my friend, and she's like, oh my God, I have this app and we have to do it. I'm like, what is it? Anyway, and then here comes Tonia on the picture and Dawn, and then Tonia, and then I'm meeting it's like we're all connecting, and then Kathy meets Dawn, and they're like, oh, click, click, click. They're all like talking, and then Kathy wants to have the experience. So here comes Tonia with, oh, I know how to do that. And that was a crazy other night that Tonia will have to tell you about that. It's insane how everything, all these phenomena are connecting together. It's so funny. But you have to hear about what happened.
Yeah, so Brent, basically what we did is the CE5 protocol. So Stephen Greer's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocol. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Okay. So we thought, since there's a lot of activity out at Bayview, like Pend Oreille, there's a supposed alien base. We thought that'd be the best place to go do it at, right? So cool. We get our little group together and we go out there. It was a full moon, you know, better make it exciting. We'll do it on the night of a full moon. And the weather was beautiful. And so Kathy had the app, and basically the app, it plays these different tones similar to sound bowls, different frequencies and different tones. And then we meditate and we actually make connection with beings. And after we meditated, if you could have seen Cindy and Angelique's face, this was their first experience with seeing a ship or a craft. You know, this isn't my first rodeo. I've seen them. They actually show up sometimes out front, you know, for me. And I think once you communicate with them and connect with them, they're more apt to show up, similar to Sasquatch. See, I don't have as many Sasquatch experiences, but Angelique and Cindy do, where now I bring in the extraterrestrial, you know, aspect. And so to see their faces, they could not believe the interaction that this craft was having with us. Like, it was powering up, and then it would power down, and then they'd tell it to power up again, and it would power up again, and then it would power down. Well, the irony of this is the moment we had this craft experience, which lasted for a good couple of minutes, I'd say, 2 chemtrails were right above our head, and then it got cloudy the whole rest of the night. I mean, I'm like, really? Like, you know, so it was kind of funny. It was like we had this really amazing experience, and then, you know, an airplane flies over, and then it just clouds up this beautiful clear sky right over Lake Pend Oreille. But it was really fun, and we'll definitely do it again. And it's something that I think as a group, the more we do it, we'll probably connect with certain beings. And that's what I've been doing with my team when we go over to, you know, Mount Adams. I have a friend who owns some property over there. Mm-hmm. And we do this regularly, and we have several craft, you know, that show up, cigar-shaped and triangular, and it's really fascinating.
It's interesting that you said Bayview, because that's just south of me, right on Lake Coeur d'Alene, or Lake Pend Oreille. Yeah. So I actually had my first flying saucer experience on the north end of the lake, off of up in the mountains there, called Trout Creek Road. And it was an actual saucer sitting above a tree watching me, and I could only see it using infrared binoculars, using Generation 1 infrared binoculars. I couldn't see it with my own eyes, but when I put up the binoculars, it was sitting there just hovering, flashing lights, but I couldn't see it when I lowered them. And I raised, lower, it was there when I looked through the infrared. When I used my own eyes, I couldn't see it, and I was like, oh my God, you know. So that was right here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this area for extraterrestrial activity is pretty popular, and I think Spokane in itself. If you watch the show UFO Witness, they've actually done 2 episodes out here, one at Priest Lake and one at Lake Pend Oreille. So there's definitely a lot of extraterrestrial activity, and you question. There's a lot of activity around military bases, so you always wonder if there's a correlation with that too.
Well, sure, the Navy base is down there, or the old Navy base. I don't know if it's still active, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's very, very small, and I was actually eating there a couple of summers ago with another friend of mine, and this at the floating restaurant. Well, just, you know, down the corner is the military. Is the little thing where it says something about the UFO thing. Well, what is so funny is, well, it's not funny, but we're, you know, this guy had his, what's it called? A drone.
Sure.
And he was flying it, and I'm not throwing it. So he had this drone And it was a very expensive drone. Well, he comes, we see it flying and we're like, dude, you shouldn't be flying it in that area. And then the next thing you know, it goes down.
Oof.
He comes running to the restaurant because it flew. And my friend Wendy, she's like, did you see that? I was like, no. This guy goes, my drone, it's $5,000. My friend Wendy goes, what happened to it? I think it went down into the water. And he's like, shoot, are you sure? And she's like, well, dude, you shouldn't have been flying it over the Navy thing. And it was like something intercepted and it just went, ooh. It just went into the water.
Oh, no.
And he never found it while we were there eating lunch. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's creepy. I know.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you guys, do you think there's, of course, there are those people that believe that there is directly a correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs, that maybe they come from outside of our world. What do you guys think? Do you have an opinion?
I mean, I've definitely seen the correlation myself with Sasquatch and UFOs, but it's really hard to say. The question is are all Sasquatch flesh and blood, or are they interdimensional? Do they shift based off of frequency?
Sure.
And if they are interdimensional, then of course you probably could suggest that they are connected with extraterrestrials. Are they extraterrestrial? I mean, I don't know. There's so many questions behind it.
Sure.
And I wish I knew, because it's really fun and exciting, but I think that's part of the excitement is trying to figure it out for ourselves.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. In some instances, I think possibly because I mean myself, I had that encounter, like I said. I came out one morning and let the dogs out. It was 5:50 a.m. February. It's still dark. And you can see the truckers up there logging. And I saw lights, but this one flew around. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I grabbed my phone, which was sitting right there, and I turned off all the lights. And I closed the front door, and my dog Star started growling a little bit, which Malamutes don't growl. They go woof, woof, or they'll make their woo, noises. But she was growling. I thought that was weird. And so I'm trying to film this flying object or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, there's pine cones being thrown at me. And I have it on my video. You can hear the pine cones coming. And I had just raked the whole freaking driveway of pine cones, and I when I realized what could possibly be throwing pine cones at me, I thought, it's like they didn't want me to be outside, but it was funny because they're throwing pine cones at me, and then one hits the my new truck, and I am like, oh no, no, y'all aren't gonna be doing that. And then they had an absolute fit, and they broke a branch, and then I was like, I don't know what this is about. And I went inside, and then later, like around 7:15 a.m., when it was just getting light out, I walked outside from my back door, and I walked around the side of the house, and I could see where my truck is. No pine cones over here, but there's a whole bunch on this side that had been thrown. So they obviously threw them just on that side of the truck. And I thought, well, what in the heck is going, like, why are y'all throwing pine cones at me? But so that was at 5:50, but at 2:20 a.m., 3 hours prior, me and my husband heard, like, ooh, from inside the house. And we both woke up and sat up, and he was like, what in the hell is that? Is that the dogs? I looked down, and all three of them were asleep. And then he was like, well, I don't know. If I can't see it, I can't shoot it, so I'm going back to bed. I'm like, well, that's just great. So I run into the living room to check on Ace because he's gone into the living room and he's laid down and nothing. And I'm like, so it was probably them. I don't know what that was about. I don't understand it, but you know, the rancher, they dealt with UFOs. Who knows? And
Sure.
I know Angelique has had some stuff happen to her too.
Yeah.
Well, I know that one of the things that I did was I jumped down a rabbit hole when I started researching the hoodoo area. And part of I guess, what makes it hoodoo is that there has been sightings of UFOs in this area since the days of the trappers even. And they didn't really know how or what they were at that time and didn't really know how to describe it. And so for myself, knowing that these beings exist, I think it's all correlated. How? I don't know, but it does seem to be that wherever you find one, you seem to find the other. Whether or not they are together or a part of the same beings, I don't know.
Right.
But there does seem to definitely be in the areas where there's Sasquatch sightings. There also seems to be sightings of orbs and UFOs and high strangeness and mysteries that people can't explain. And that has been going on for a very long time, since before we even knew about aircrafts. I mean, I jumped down a rabbit hole there at the genealogy section in the Coeur d'Alene Library and found, you know, where some of these things and these sightings came about in newspaper clippings and things like that, where people were talking about it long before there was even vehicles. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it could quite possibly be, but then at the same time, you just don't know. That's it. We're just barely scratching the surface. And I think that with the beginning of the internet and YouTube especially, and being able to listen to other people tell their encounters and their stories and stuff, if you sit down and really write down the information that each person tells in their encounters and in their experiences, you're going to find that we can glean a lot of information from each other, because I don't think we're being allowed to know this stuff from the powers that be. And I'm not going to go into politics, but you can take it from there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, it occurred to me as well that, you know, there are histories that allege in the First Nations that there was active trading between them and these forest people. And so
Absolutely.
perhaps if these extraterrestrials have been around for as long as, you know, we believe they have been, which is probably for centuries or millennia, then maybe they have a relationship with them too. I mean, could they be on good terms? Could they be trading amongst themselves? I mean, who knows? It's hard to say, but yeah.
It is. And I think as humans, we're all out trying to prove something or try to kill them or nab one. And, you know, so I'm sure, you know, that they're like, you know, stay away from them, or they can kind of sense our intention. And I feel like there's a correlation with sacred sites as well, like Crystal Springs, the pyramid in Chewelah. There's an ancient pyramid in Chewelah that I've been to several times, and wow, the energy is very powerful there. I know Kelly has been there and has had several Sasquatch experiences there. When I first moved here, I actually had 3 different people, my hairdresser, I was getting a massage, and then some random at the grocery store told me, all 3 of them randomly told me that they saw craft that followed them on Route 2 going out of Spokane, like towards Seattle. If you take Route 2 towards, is it the Colville National, or is it Colville? No. Yeah. So Route 2. Anyway, there's a huge triangular craft that follows cars, out there. Now the question is that a real extraterrestrial craft or is that a government, craft? But I just thought that was very kind of synchronistic that I had 3 different people that didn't even know each other randomly mentioned to me that they had been followed on Route 2 once they get out more into the deserted areas.
Is it at night or in the day, or did they say?
2 of them were at night and 1 was in the day.
Wow.
One of them, she said she lived out there. There's a small little town out there, and she would drive back and forth from Spokane. So it wasn't one time that it happened. She said it happened at least 5 times. She said it was very common, and it would just get real low. And she said it was kind of scary because you couldn't hear it, but you could see the lights, and it was obviously a triangular craft. And my friend Edward, who actually experienced that, he found a photo that looks very similar to what he experienced when he was out there on Route 2. And he's one of the ones that does the CE5 with us as well.
Oh.
And Tonia, Route 2, that was where I was living when I found the elk that disappeared. It was
really
on Highway 2 in the Colville National Forest.
There you go.
Oof.
See, there's something going on there. And we know with the National Forest, with David Paulides and all the missing people, there's just a lot of high strangeness, unknown activity that I think happens. And we're surrounded here in North Idaho, Eastern Washington with national forests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're swimming them.
I wanted to, since we're talking about UFOs, I don't know, Justin was still little, but we were outside. We were at the end of my driveway where I got a crazy audio, not there. I mean, it was probably from the base of the mountain, that 38-second moan that I have. But we're standing out there because we're looking at this weird bird that was up in the tree, and I was thinking, what is that? That's not an owl. So we were looking, and all of a sudden we hear like this whirring, like a whirring noise, and we both look up, and there is this drone that back then drones weren't really around, or like they were just like those, like, but maybe $100 now, because back then it might have sold for like $400 because it was like so new. Mm-hmm. But like we look up and we see like this drone, but it's not anywhere like what my neighbor saw. So my neighbor lives like 20 acres, well, I don't know, maybe a half a mile away. She came out one day and she saw a huge cigar-shaped drone, and it was down low enough, like at the top of the trees, and it wasn't a UFO. Because I asked her, I was like, well, how do you know if it's not a UFO? And she was like, Laura, she's pretty blunt. She said, I'm not a dumbass. I know what a UFO looks like. And she's, I was like, okay. Sorry.
Wow.
She's like, it was a freaking drone. And it just like powered up, like how we would see the UFOs. It just went shh, shh. And she was like, I have no idea, but her animals were just making a lot of noise. And I was like, what the heck? And I told her that we saw a smaller drone, like flying across the street, and it flew above me and Justin, and it flew across the street. I was like, what was that? Did you see that? He was like, yeah, it looked like he was still little. So his description of it was, it looked like an airplane. I was like, that is so weird, because it was kind of like but like going like really, really fast, and the gray color of it was like just weird, kind of like I've never seen a gray color that, and it was so fast that I just like looked at it, and then it flew across the street to that property over there that goes down where I've had Sasquatches, sleep across the street, and I don't care. And they would like, or whatever was asleep over there down in the hollers down there, because it goes down the property across the street, and then it goes up the mountain. So who knows what that was? I mean, this place, this whole area is just crazy. Like,
yeah,
people have committed suicide for no reason, and like Angelique told you, and some of the research that she discovered. And I've had, there was 10 acres that there was an easement argument over, and then the owner of the easement said, this is my road, but this easement led up to other cabins up there, so she shut the easement down. Well, guess what? That made those cabins landlocked, because the other way, that road that we go up the mountain, y'all, okay, so if you go up, there's another way to come back down, but these cabins up there, this house has allowed them access, but then that house was sold. A new owner came in. She blocked the easement. She proved that she was right. This guy bulldozes past her, the easement, and he's like, screw you. I'm going up there. He ends up killing himself.
Oh, dear God.
For no reason. Nobody
I
knows.
think that's where the disembodied spirits or the earthbound spirits, they kind of can take over a person's body, I don't know. That's just my thoughts around it.
Well, there was somebody from, I think it was like, if I remember correctly reading, it was somebody in, I think, the 60s. Don't quote me on that, but it was a young man who was happy. Life was going good for him. He just got a good job. He's got a pretty girlfriend, and life was happy for him. And they decided to go for a drive up Hoodoo. And from what I remember in the story, like I said, please don't quote me on it, but it was like he just looked over and just walked off and killed himself, and there was nothing to cause it. It was almost like he went into a trance. And that's one of the things that they've said, is that a lot of these people who have committed suicide have almost gone into almost like a trance right before they do it, where there's just no reason for it. And that's one of the things that was written in these old history books, was that was one of the anomalies that happens up in the Hoodoo area. So,
and quick story. I know I've told the story before, but I don't think sometimes it's hard for me to tell the story, but I'm okay today. Like when we were in Yakima, I told the one about the pet cemetery, but I didn't tell this story. I don't think, because I was just really emotional that day when we were on stage, and so I knew I couldn't talk about this, but I can talk about it now. So in May of 2020, like May 23rd, so I'm just going to tell y'all. So me and my older son, he's kind of kicked us out of his life, and it's long, dumb story. And it still is not resolved, and it's killed me.
Yeah.
And 2020, I was home alone. Ron had to go, left to Texas because his dad was very sick. He was on a ventilator, actually. It was pretty bad. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and I remember I was in bed, and we had just gotten in this horrible argument, and he did what I thought he would never do, and he just like totally just like blocked me, and I just couldn't believe it. And I mean, if you want to talk about bottom of the barrel, crying,
sure,
breakdown, whatever you want to call it, that was a bad day. And I remember stopping and thinking, this pain has got to go away. I'm an empath, so that doesn't help. And I remember thinking, I will do whatever it takes to get rid of this pain. I mean, I literally was crying so much. And then my younger son came home from work, and at this time he's 17. And so he walked in, he found me, and he found out what happened. And so, so now he's mad, and I'm like, I was mad at myself for letting him find me that upset. And then I assured him I'm okay. But I remember going to bed and I was thinking, this is why people commit suicide. They can't take the pain. And I remember making a joke out of it, thinking, even if I wanted to kill myself, I probably would do something stupid. Like I would be like still alive out in the backwoods, because I would be like, I probably wouldn't do it right. And I was just laughing about it because my nephew, he overdosed. And so to me that, suicide is not a joke. I would never do it, but I'll tell you what, I was in a lot of pain and I fell asleep that night. And at 2:20 a.m. at night is when the female walked up to my window and I could feel her like screaming at me, like, are you crazy? Are you insane? Because right underneath the window was my AK, and it was loaded, and I was like, she was like reading my intentions. I wanted the pain to go away, and I said, "Oh, I'm okay." And then in my head, I was telling her I would never do that, and then I felt like this peace, like a promise, and I was gonna get up to go get something, but I went back to sleep and I slept all night till 9 a.m. So she knew what was going through my head. She knew my pain, and they know these things. They can understand. They can see things we've done when we've messed up. And I mean, it's a total circus, like, all the time here, like,
Sure.
I can hear them screaming sometimes, and I've learned to go outside and acknowledge them, and then they'll stop. This one night they didn't stop. They kept going off and off and off, and they were trying to tell me my dogs had taken off. My two little crappy dogs went over the fence, and they kept going, and then we found them like 24 hours later, but they were going off all night. And I went outside and I was like, okay, I hear you. But they kept going and going and going. And that's the only thing I can think of. That next day, one of the dog's collars was like taken off of him. And it was like right there for me to find in front of the sliding glass door. Like they took it off and didn't like them wearing these shock collars. So, I mean,
I think that they are, I mean, even dogs, like Caesar, the dog whisperer guy, he talks about how if you have an agitated dog, it's because it's cueing off the energy of the owner. And if you have a calm dog, you've got a calm owner. And so if a dog can mirror our emotions so absolutely, it's not a lot to think that other things out in our natural world can as well. In fact, they're probably much more adept at it than we are because they don't have all the garbage we have to deal with. They are just connected and in tune with their environment. So, when someone comes in that's all distraught and stuff, I'm sure they, as far as empathy goes, and there are empaths that are people, and you guys, I'm sure, are well aware of it, all of you listening, but these things must be amplified by 10 or better. I mean, they just can feel that, a person is there, and they can also feel, I think they can feel what that person's all about, whether it's a good person, whether it's an evil person, or whether it's a horrible person, whatever. So I believe that.
It's why they just love Angelique. Like, oh my God. I said, Angelique's coming out tomorrow, maybe. And they're just like going crazy. Like, I see them in my, they're all like going,
I think too, Cindy and I don't know if Angelique does or not, but I've experienced the mind speak. I have a kind of a crazy story. It involves losing track of time and just really weird chain of events. So I was following my friends driving over to Mount Adams one weekend, and they were in front of me on the expressway, and somehow I had gotten lost. I had gone south near Yakima when I really needed to go north, and they ended up getting to the ranch, and somehow I had gotten lost in the Yakima reservation. And so here we are again in another sacred land, and I'm driving through this area all by myself, and something hits me like a ton of bricks, and I'm sobbing my eyes out, just crying. I had so hard I had to pull over. I couldn't handle it. It was really intense. So I get out of my car. I'm the only one there, and I had flip-flops on, and I go and I stand like on the side of the road in the grass, and I take my shoes off, and I begin to realize that this is a common trait of people going missing, is they take their shoes off. At least that's what David Politi says. But I take my shoes off and I start chanting. This stuff is coming through me, and I felt like I was in a trance, very similar to what Angelique was talking about. And I had this information coming through me, but it didn't feel scary. It didn't feel like I was being attacked. It felt more loving and compassionate. I don't really know how to explain it, but I felt emotional. It was like I was maybe picking up on the energy of the land, or a being there or something. I don't really know. But so I don't really know how long that lasted. I just know that I was barefoot, standing on the side of the road. No cars passed me. I was there by myself. Well, then I get back. I finally come to it. I get back in my car, and I kind of just sit there for a minute, like, what the heck just happened to me? Like, this was really intense. And so I get back in my car, and I plug into my GPS when my GPS starts working, because I'm kind of in an area where there's not a lot of cell service. And I start heading to the location where my friends are. Well, once I get to a place where there's service, I see like 10 phone calls, and it's my friends. They're like, where the heck are you? They're leaving me messages. They're leaving me texts. Where the heck are you? And I'm like, no big deal, guys. I got lost. I came up through the reservation, and I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20-ish minutes. And they're like, I get there, and they're in a panic. This is Dawn. This is my friend Dawn and Jay. They're in a panic, and I'm like, what is what's the problem, you guys? They're like, where did you go? You've been gone for 3.5 hours. Well, I thought I was only gone for 30 minutes. Like, I literally thought I had gone off track for about 30 minutes. And so I had lost a significant amount of time. I had been put in a trance. Now, was I abducted? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. But that night, I had a very profound mind speak Sasquatch experience. That this is really the only Sasquatch experience that I've had that really rattled me kind of to my core. And so we were staying in a yurt, the three of us, and I was up on the top. And that morning it was probably about 3:30ish, 4 o'clock, I had been woken up. I had been woken up very strongly and said, go out to the meadow, go out to the meadow. And I'm like, okay. So we were staying in these yurts on the edge of a meadow, and it's pitch black, it's pitch dark. And I'm thinking, okay. So I get my clothes on. My friends thought I was just going out to go use the restroom, because there wasn't a restroom in the yurt. You had to go out to the outhouse. So it's like 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I find my way out to the meadow, and there's a bench that someone had made out there with logs. And so I find myself I sit down on this bench. It's pitch black. I can't see anything. I don't hear anything. I'm just out in the woods by myself in a meadow. And so I sit down on this log, and I feel this powerful hands lay on the backs of on my shoulders, huge. I felt like the thumb went down to my mid-back, and the tops of the fingers came down past my chest, like this huge hands, and I just wept. It was like, holy cow, whatever this energy is that just basically embraced me was one of the most profound energies. And all I could hear in my head was, it's time to let it go. You don't need to hold on to this anymore. And it was like just sobbing. I mean, I cried and I cried and I cried. Well, during this time, I had closed my eyes. Like, I had just closed my eyes. And when I finally came to, I opened up my eyes, and it was light. Like, the sun was out, it was bright. And about 20 feet in front of me was a deer, and it was staring at me dead on in my eyes. And immediately I felt Sasquatch. I felt Sasquatch presence. So when Angelique was sharing that story about the elk, I'm curious if that was actually Sasquatch that was presenting themselves in the form of an animal, because I've heard many stories about this, that they can present themselves in a way that we feel unthreatened by or we feel comforted by. And I was absolutely experienced mind speak. And I know Barry Littleton, I don't know if you guys know him, but he has also been to the same location, and he experienced a very similar experience that I had with the mind speak and the Sasquatch, where we were guided out into this particular meadow, and then he woke up and he saw an animal there as well. And so it's like there's just this commonality with it, that if I open my eyes and there's a huge 10-foot Sasquatch standing there, I probably would have freaked out. But yeah. I open my eyes and I see a harmless deer, I'm in much more of a, calming place. So I don't know, there's that as well. There's the talk about them cloaking, but then there's also the talk about them shape-shifting, as well. And so I can't 100% say that was a Sasquatch, sure, but I can definitely say I felt it. And that night I actually had a dream. It was really funny. We were in the yurt and I had a dream, and I was kicking and screaming in my bed, and my friends had to wake me up. They were like, you're screaming at the top of your lungs our name, like in your sleep, and you're sleeping and you're trying to yell and you can't. Yeah. Well, in my dream, I had the most vivid dream that a Sasquatch was holding me up in the air, similar to like Simba on The Lion King. Uh-huh. It was holding me in the air, and I looked like a toddler. I mean, it was laughing. It was holding me, and I'm kicking, and I'm trying to get my friends' attention. They're on the trail in front of me, and they're just chatting amongst one another, and they would not turn around. I was trying to get their attention so they could turn around to see that a Sasquatch was holding me, in the air. And in my dream, this was so intensely vivid that I was screaming, in my dream, that my friends had to wake me up. They were like, what is going on? I'm like, and the moment I woke up, I'm just, Sasquatches, it was like I was in, and you have a dream that's so powerful, sure, and then you wake up from it and you're like, okay, was that a dream or was that not a dream? And so right, they kind of lived those 2 days with me, and they're like, I don't know what the heck just happened to you. You get lost, you lose time, yeah, you have this weird mind speak thing, you have this strange dream, so that it was like 2 days of just really weird high strangeness that I went through. And I don't know how to explain any of it. I just know that I went through some weird stuff that involved Sasquatch and I think extraterrestrials.
Can I ask you though about the mind speak, because I've heard lots of people claim mind speak, and it sounds like those that experience it are very clear that it's not just an imagination thing. Like it's very distinct, a very distinct experience. Like it's not like just having a thought of a voice or something. It's very powerful. How did it feel for you?
It woke me up out of sleep. It was like, go to the meadow. It was almost like, what do they talk? It's called the God voice or whatever. Sure. The CIA would use it and they would mess with people's minds, and, it's like a voice in your head. And it wasn't like it was my intuition. It wasn't like, I was like, oh, this subtle voice. It was a, go do this. And I was like, okay, and I kind of just followed that. And then for me, it was more like a healing experience, good, when I experienced it. But Barry, the way Barry talks about it, he said it was very similar. It was just this sequence of coincidences that happened that you can't explain, and you're just like, what was that? Was that a Sasquatch? Was that extraterrestrial? I mean, it's kind of hard when you get around Mount Adams. There's so much activity in that area that you can't really tell what it is that sure, is communicating with you. And is it telepathy? Right. Being highly, I can communicate with the spirit realm, so why can't I communicate with extraterrestrials or other sure, beings, so is mind speak just a form of telepathy? I don't know.
I think it is, but it seems that the people that experience it is like, you can't ignore it. It's not like just a subtle thing. It's like, boom. Even Les Stroud had an experience with mind speak. And, he was absolutely convinced that it was a very real phenomena. and that he was communicating with them, or at least they were communicating with him. But he said it was just such a profoundly powerful experience. There was no ignoring it. And so I was very curious about that because I haven't experienced it, but I wonder, what is that like? And how neat is that, if that is the case, that, maybe they don't share a language with us outside of mimicking, but maybe they can through telepathic means, or through, maybe it's just an extreme form of empathy that they're able to communicate empathetic thought to people. I don't know. It's hard to understand the mechanics of it, but it does come up a lot. So, I mean, it's very much a phenomenon people experience. We do have a question from our chat. It's from one of our mods. It says, does the geological landscape of the property in the High Strangeness have lots of quartz or an underground streams or springs? And that comes up a lot in paranormal investigations. Of course, quartz content in soils is a real magnifier for paranormal energies, as are streams, whether on the surface or underground. So do you guys know of these areas? Is there lots of these traits?
Well, we are actually on a major aquifer.
Okay.
And also, a couple of years ago, as you know, when Tonia is talking about how we're affected by behaviors or whatever connections they're trying to make with us, when my younger son was coming into his teenage years, how we all have issues with our teenagers and things like that.
Sure.
I came to your show, and I had three people help me read remote view.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that there was things attacking or trying to attach themselves to the young people here in the area, because they have such this energy about them.
Sure.
And that the water is, so a dogman is a water spirit. So they said there's dogmen in your area and they relate to the water. I'm like, that's okay. And then they said that they had to clean the waterways. So it took 3 of them. They went to Spirit Lake, and they said that there was 2 portals in Spirit Lake. And I'll have to tell you that story, Angelique. I don't know if I did or not, but there is one huge portal and there was another smaller portal. And they said that was a main portal or area of beings coming in, and they said it was ancient, and they said that it was a problem. And I was like, and they said, and that's why the town of Spirit Lake has so many problems, with the city council. It's actually kind of funny. They were saying it's just an area, but it's not just Spirit Lake. It's the whole area of whatever this is that's going on, this phenomena. And so this one day, they were giving me this reading about my life and my son, and and they said that they were going to do a cleaning and that they were going to smudge him from afar, I guess, if you want to say. And they discovered the 2 portals. And so, and I'm like, what? This is before I was on my way to being on board of the paranormal, of everything, trying to accept it and all of that. And they're telling me that they had to, 2 of them lifted the portals up in the air. So the whole time I'm trying to think, okay, cuckoo. But I found it very interesting, and I totally believed them. And I wasn't even totally on board yet with it. They had to clean the water. They didn't get northwest, southeast, whatever. They didn't get all of the water because the guy who was cleaning the water, his hand got burned.
Yeah.
His hand got burned. And so they didn't get to complete what they were doing, but they did enough of cleaning up of the area. And after that, they kind of kept in contact with me, and they did remote viewing of the area, not just my property, of the area. And they kind of kept in touch with me for a while. And I almost stopped researching altogether because I thought I was doing something wrong. You know, am I inviting these anomalies, you know, this phenomena into my family? And because I had told Deborah, when I call your show when she's on, and I said, is it me? Do I need to start researching? And she was no. And I was just blown away by what they found here in the area. So this is not the first instance, you know, of the land clearing. This goes back. I've dealt with other people, and that's what they found. And then me and Angelique went to this location because I found a structure, and then she had told me about their lost time, getting lost. And so she's like, I have to come see it. So she came over the next day, and we drove to this state land, and it's not far from my house. She's just going to have to tell you what happened because it was unbelievable.
Are you talking about where we're going to go tomorrow?
Shit.
Yeah.
Or shoot. Did you say shoot?
Yeah, I said shoot.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Cindy and I went not too far from her place. We found a very thicker than what Tonia and I had gone through and gotten lost in. It was just as thick as the fur on a dog's back. I mean, lodgepole trees that were so straight and so thick and dense that you really couldn't see too far from where, I mean, you couldn't walk in. You'd have to go in sideways through some of the trees. And we found a game trail in it, and we just followed the game trail, and it was an enormous game trail. We're talking one that's bigger than an elk. So, I mean, I could have almost driven my Jeep down it. That's how wide this game trail was. And as we made our way down these game trails, we started coming across these structures. And, you know, when you're in a thick stand of trees and there's no windfall, there's no snow load, they're all perfectly straight and upright. And then all of a sudden, this game trail leads to an area where there's these very elaborate structures that I can't explain any other way than they seem to be basically lodges. A lot of the trees had been ripped up. Lodgepole trees this big around had been ripped out of the ground, root system left in the ground. They were just torn off and then brought over to the area where the structure was and weaved into the structures, and until they literally created like bedrooms. And if you followed the game trails in, they would literally go in and you would find beds in these structures. Now, whether or not in the very beginning they started off as a snow load could quite possibly have been, but they didn't end that way. They were being utilized. And as we were making our way around down this game trail, we were coming across a lodge here, and then we come across a lodge here, and it was almost like I looked at Cindy and I told her, I said, I feel like we're in a village. Like this is like somebody's home, and then you go down the pathway and there's somebody else's home, and then it opened up to this absolutely enormous structure that was bigger than the house that I just moved from, that was almost 1,500 square feet. It was 2 stories high and so intricately woven together that I told Cindy, I said, this is the longhouse. This is the longhouse. This is where, if it was a native village, this would have been where the elders would have met to have their to have their meetings and discuss what needed to be done for the people. And it was quite obviously being utilized as a multiple, I guess, many beings were staying in this. I was the dumb one. I really was. I without even thinking and still kind of going, what are we looking at? I crawled in because I wanted to see what it looked like from the inside, and that was wrong. It was wrong of me. It was disrespectful. It was wrong. I was entering somebody else's house, and I need to go back tomorrow and apologize.
So did I.
You both got really sick. Why don't you talk about how sick you both got?
Yeah, the very perfectly fine. And for the first time, okay, so I had COVID earlier this year. COVID did not affect me like what happened to me and it's been a few weeks now. I have literally felt like I had some kind of a poisoning. I spent 3 days vomiting. It's literally drinking just so I would have something to vomit. That was how bad it was. And I told Cindy, I said, I feel like I got radiation poisoning is what it felt like. And I told her, and I talked to several of the elders from the tribe and said, this is what happened. I did something disrespectful. What do I do? And they said, you need to go back. You need to give a tobacco offering. You need to apologize and possibly to leave an offering of some kind, like food or something, but just let them know that you didn't intentionally mean to infiltrate their home. And that's what we're going to do tomorrow, because quite frankly, I am still sick. Wow. And it has been for 3 weeks now, at least 4 weeks, almost a month.
Yeah. So the first time, okay, so this trail I took, I've ridden that trail many times with my four-wheeler and my horse, and
she's gone. There she is.
Sorry. So I've ridden these trails so many times, and the one side is state land, the other is private land. Okay. Now, I have never liked these trails, and when I take my four-wheeler and I'm coming down like the power line road, I will literally ride like this and look, or I'll go in the middle of this area and I will be like, hurry up. Well, this one day I said, I'm going to take that trail, because I took it with my husband on horseback many years ago. But this one day I was on my four-wheeler, which was a couple of weeks ago, and I was going through there, and I saw this, like she said, this structure, and I thought, that's kind of weird. So sorry, I'm drinking that. It's giving me heartburn. So I got down from my four-wheeler, and I left it running, and I was creeped out right away. I was regretting even, because I was halfway through this area. Thank God it's not that long. And I saw this structure, and I was like, that is insane. That was only one of the little ones. The bigger one was way down there. And then I noticed the game trail. So then I hopped on the four-wheel, and I went straight out, and I kept looking back. I was like, oh, my God, where's Scott Carpenter when you need him? By putting a video in the back and let it play when I'm going. I mean, I'm telling you, I felt like something was doing this to me the whole time. It was just going to just catch me until I got out of there. That's how creeped out I was. And then I called Angelique and I told her what I found. And she came out the next day. And that is when what she's talking about, what happened. And because of y'all's lost time, she was tying ribbons. Remember? We kept going. At first I was like, what? It's just, we can't get lost. It's we're going right there. But let me tell you what, the further we went in, I was starting to get okay, I know I came back from that way. Then you turn around and then you're like, wait a minute, because it's so dense. All you have is this game trail. Everywhere you look, there's nothing but straight trees, unless it's specifically something by nature or this hut that we were next to. And when me and Angelique had gone back that next day, like she said, I even crawled into one of the homes and I stood up in there, and there's photos of me. Remember those photos you took of me standing there like that? And do you know what? In one of those photos, there is a big Sasquatch or something standing above me, and it's looking down, and it's doing this, looking down, and it's in the photo. And then there's like a younger one, and I don't know if Robin McRae saw it. I showed it to someone else, and they're like, oh yeah, I can see it here. I did not tell them where to look. They could see it like maybe 9 feet tall, because I'm like barely 5'2". So it was towering over me. But of course, I didn't know that till I got home. And then the next day, we had to leave for like Yakima. Oh, no, we still had a week left. So the next day, Angelique is getting sick, and she's calling me, and I'm like, I am so sick too, but I have vertigo like all the time. It's kind of like when you're sick, you're going to throw up. But we were like this all the way till the Yakima Bigfoot Con event, because we were speakers there. And Tonia is telling us, go outside and ground, go do this, go do that. And we just,
like, I knew it was energetic. It was frequency. It wasn't physical. It was frequency. And to answer the moderator's question about the quartz, we live in the gem state, Idaho. So it's basically like we're sitting on a crystal bed. So there's so many mining areas in here. And so it's like we're on our own personal orgone. Yeah. And so, of course, there's these little pockets of energy. And I think when they went and found this structure, there's some sort of a pocket of energy there that they may have picked up. And so that's why I was kind of telling them to clear their energy, right? Because I think it's more frequency based.
Yeah, there's another question from the chat. It says, do the structures appear to line up with any particular constellation or stars in the night sky? Could be Bigfoot sees their own type of constellations in the night sky?
That's a good question. We may have to research that, ladies.
Yeah. So we're going back tomorrow because, like Angelique said, I have been back there with my dogs, but I didn't go into the woods. I just walked straight through the logging road. And I was creeped out, but I knew what I was doing. Well, I knew that I had made the conscious decision to go down this trail, and I was apologizing left and right. But I don't think, it's going to take both of us to go back, because something we haven't touched on here is how we research what are our goals and what are our standards. So obviously I don't know if this is a Native American thing, because I'm Native American, so are you, each of you. I'm not sure about Deanna's, but that's not what our motto, like, oh, we're Native American, so this is how we're going to, it's not. But we all have family members, we all we're empaths, and it's almost like our ancestors are trying to come through to us to perfect and hone our gifts, I guess, because I'm noticing, especially with you, Angelique, how that you have come so far in just a couple of weeks. I've noticed, like, you would say, well, what is that? Now you're saying, oh my gosh, this happened to me. Like, I saw this, like when you were in Priest Lake and you saw Grandmother Rock, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're not trying to prove that they exist. We know they exist. We try to operate on a respectful level, and we didn't do that when we found this area. And so tomorrow, me and her, the goal is that we're going to go out there and do that. Good. And Angelique knows more about that than I do. So
Sure.
Well, one of the things that we really have come together and have learned as a team, not just from each other, but from learning from these beings, is that they're open to teach you. There are many, many clans, many, many tribes of these beings that live and have lived in the wilderness for probably thousands and thousands of years. But when it comes to modern man encroaching upon their territory, you don't know what they have experienced from us. So you don't know if you're going to come across a forest person, who has been shot at, because there's been many that have been shot. You don't know if you're coming across one that is angry because his territory has been taken away. You don't know. The only thing you can do is very carefully present yourself when you have an encounter with these beings in a way that gives them the respect that's due them, as if you're coming in contact with a stranger who you accidentally stepped in their house. Sure. You're walking down the street, you open the door thinking it's your house because it looks identical to the one next door, and it turns out you're walking in on somebody else's home. Mm-hmm. The first thing you do is step back and, whoops, I'm sorry. Oops, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I'm going to leave now. Mm-hmm. Carefully. And hopefully that person hasn't had PTSD and decides to shoot you.
Right.
You just don't know. And so anytime that we come out in the wilderness, what we want to do is not to prove that they exist, because for the thousands of people who have had encounters with them, and more each day, I'm finding out, you don't have to prove to them what happened. They know. You know that you know that you know. It's just now you have to live your life in a different way, knowing that something exists that you didn't know existed before. Sure. So our goal is to be able to learn how to communicate with them in a way that is respectful, honorable, and is able to hopefully establish a relationship well enough that we can teach and educate other people before they go out in the wilderness of what to expect, what to do, and what not to do, to prevent anyone from either side being hurt. Sure. And it's something that I feel very passionate about. I feel that I've been called to do, and I have had basically, I guess for no other way to explain it, the blessing of the forest people to be able to speak on their behalf.
Cool.
And when we are out to, like, for example, when me and Angelique went out to the area where Tonia and her had, when Tonia went back with her at that one area of the tree that was peeled down, and where they had their lost time, and like they were talking about, they found, there was bones there. Is this a feeding area? There was no heads. So there was a theory about that, possibly being a poacher. But the thing is that we didn't take any evidence. And like when that tree was probably 16 feet high, at the bottom of where it was peeled, like, because where I was standing underneath it was probably peeled from so high up that even the bottom part of the tree was still so high. There was like wispy hair hanging from there. We took nothing. And there's a reason why we didn't take anything.
Sure.
Yep.
No, I think that's
right.
important. That's very important. Unfortunately, we're about out of time for tonight, but obviously we've got a lot more to discuss. So you guys will have to come back again, and we'll do some more digging into this, and to follow up on what you guys find out after your continued investigations and such. But I just want to thank you all for being here. I know Deanna had to cut out because she just was, she's wasn't sitting in a good place and not comfortable, so she had to bow out. But thank you all for being here and taking the time to introduce yourselves to us. Can you let everybody know, whomever of you wants to, how to stay in touch with what you guys are doing, how to get in touch with you if anybody wants to correspond with what you guys are doing?
Well, I'm on Facebook under Cindy Goodbrake, and they're on Facebook under their names, Tonia. Well,
Or just go straight to our Facebook page, the Sasquatch Sisters Northwest. That's probably the best way to communicate with us.
Perfect.
And send us an email to Sasquatch Sisters. Is it Northwest?
Northwest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like-
Sasquatch Sisters Northwest at gmail.com. And we also have a YouTube channel. So if there's anyone who would like to share their true encounter from the inland Northwest, which would be the northeastern part of Washington State, across the panhandle of North Idaho, over into the northwestern part of Montana. We would love to share your story and check in with us. We try to post on our Facebook page at least every other day at least. So please get a hold of us. We would love to hear from you.
Now, the email address was at Sasquatch Sisters NW, or is it the
No,
word?
it's spelled out.
It's all spelled out. Okay.
Sasquatch Sisters Northwest at gmail.com.
Okay.
It's long, but you know.
It's worth the effort, by God.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm sorry, Cindy, were you going to say something?
Oh, nothing. I just said that it's long, but just type it out and you'll find us.
All right. Very good. If you three would just stick around, I'm going to close up the show and then we'll chat a little bit after the show if you got a minute. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on the Paranormal Portal. I appreciate you being here, and thank you all so much for the comments, those of you that have been along with us. Oh, I better put that back. Do that again, Angelique. Her Bigfoot. All right. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Sheldon will be joining me. We'll get into the Saturday show, but thank you all for being a part of the journey. Remember, we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll see you there right at 7 p.m. Pacific time right here on YouTube. So until then, be good.